people say 3,660 years. They're different estimates, and there's no consensus around it. There are a lot of people that say that that's why we're having global warming, that actually we're having solar system warming because of this body, which has various names. It has names like Nibiru, Hercobulus, Nemesis, Planet X. It's supposed to have caused, the plagues in Egypt and Israel. It's supposed to be, a force that comes into the solar system on a periodic basis and wreaks havoc. Now,
I've heard of Planet X and Nibiru. Just to interrupt you briefly, I'm sorry, Alfred, but these were, there was a lot of talk of Planet X and Nibiru, wasn't there, during the last year or so? It seems like we were supposed to have some kind of an encounter with Nibiru. Wasn't it last fall? There have been sort of a lot of false alarms, or some people say intentional psyops, and this is a very complex field because there's just a huge amount of misinformation, disinformation in it. There was one boomlet of information that Nibiru or Planet X or Hercobulus. That's kind of the phrase that I like because in that version it's a dwarf star, a brown dwarf star that's like a mini solar system in itself, and it was supposed to have come around 2003. Now that was one version put out by one faction in this field. Then about a year ago, one other commentator says that the U.S. military intelligence agencies put out a disinformation alert to make it seem that Comet Elenin was to try and confuse Comet Elenin with Hercobulus or Planet X. And so that everybody got excited about Comet Elenin, and that was supposed to be a big deal, and then it turned out to be nothing. And according to this person, that was an intentional psyops to get people all excited about this celestial body that was connected to Nibiru or Planet X or Hercobulus. And when nothing happened, then everybody would say, "You see, it's nothing," and that was this whole plan of disinformation. So now that all of these kind of precursors have passed, now once again there's a wave that's starting to happen again, because there are all sorts of precursors and signs. Number one, there is an enormous number of comets that have begun to occur. And it's not, these are comets that have come into the solar system, and these are more comets than usual, and they're all coming from the same direction. And it's as though there's some large object which is pushing all these comets in the same direction our way. So there's a group of these comets or rogue planets. It's not just one, then. That's why there's so many different names. Is that what you're hypothesizing here, Alfred?
Well, this is just one point that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're getting a whole series of comets, what are called Kreutz comets, Kreutz comets, that are jumping up out of nowhere, and they're all coming from the same direction, as though there's a large celestial body that is pushing them toward the inner solar system.
What do you think would be the cause of such an event?
Well, that kind of black box, or that cause, might be Hercolibus, or Planet X, or Nibiru, or Nemesis, which other of these names you want to call the brown dwarf sun twin to our sun, which is in an elliptical orbit to our sun and is at a 45-degree angle approximately to the ecliptic. So it's not on the same plane as the planets. It's kind of coming in from underneath. So it's hard to see until it's here. And so that there are all these kind of telltale signs that are starting to happen that say that something's up. Something is up. For example, the large number of earthquakes that are starting to happen now.
Yes, sir.
You know, there's been an uptick. If you look at the graphs in terms of the number of earthquakes, the graph takes an uptick, definitely, over the last number of years.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole issue of global warming. Well, it's not so much that from automobile use, it's that the whole solar system is going into global warming. And what's that about? Right. Well, it could be that the brown dwarf twin to our sun is approaching our sun, so things are heating up inside the solar system.
Oh, well, that would only make sense.
Yeah.
If you have two suns, it's going to get hotter. And I have seen that on the internet, where there's like the sun and then there's another littler sun not so far from it, you know. I have seen pictures of that. But
and right. And so then here's the catch. That we have a what we call the elite, or I call them International War Crimes Racketeering Organization. These are the banking bloodline families. These are the British Crown bloodline monarchs. They control doping, the world drug, and they've known. And we have the Vatican. They've known about this, and we have the U.S. government. They've known about this for at least 30 years, 40 years actually, and so their solution was to build underground shelters for the elites, for all of the armed forces, for all of the police forces, for the political and financial elite, for all the governmental officials, to go underground, and for the 7 billion people or the 6.9 billion people that are left to be on the surface, to be wiped out by Hercolibus or Planet X or Nemesis or Nibiru. So that's their plan.
And maybe
so
then
that's why.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just saying that's why all of this is happening, and it's not in the mainstream news.
Well, I was going to comment that the Georgia Guidestones, I believe, were put up in about 1982, and they're saying we need to get the Earth's population under that proclamation down to 500 million. And I suppose if they had 500 million people even in them tunnels, that would be probably optimistic to fit that many down there. Wouldn't you think, Alfred? That they probably aren't planning to take that?
Yeah, so that 1982 is about the time that they had the underground bases already built, so that and that they knew that this was going to occur, so that that's been sort of out there, hiding in clear view as to what this hidden plan of the elite was. And this is something that I've been studying actually for the past 38 years, 39 years to be exact. And I can share with you the course of my studies up to date, and I have been taking an extreme view of Occam's razor, i.e., I have always been saying, okay, we're not going to sign anything to Hercolibus or Planet X or Nemesis or Nibiru until it's absolutely necessary. And I've been doing that for 39 years. And so
because you knew there'd be false flags and such regarding this subject.
Oh, yeah. And so now I'm still not certain, but now it merits talking about it more. Now, and there seem to be a lot of puzzles in here, what I call almost two different timelines. That is almost a catastrophic timeline and what we call a positive timeline or a utopian timeline. And almost as though we can choose one or the other. And I can share with you in these 2 hours that we have, if that's okay with you, I can share with you.
Yes, I'm curious.
My studies
how we would
going
have a
back
choice.
to 1973. Sorry? I'm sorry?
I'm curious how we could have a choice between catastrophic and utopia, and those seems to be at the two extremes of the choosing scale.
Yeah. I am not certain about it either, but I think that it's there, and that we can, in fact, mitigate a lot of the damage or potential damage from a near flyby of Hercolibus or Planet X. But right now, humanity is being kept in the dark deliberately in order to maximize our casualties, in order to create what we could call almost an extinction level event, at least an extinction level event of the surface population. Now, going back to the beginning of my studies, this began when I began my research in 1973. This was when I first started studies. I was general counsel of the Environmental Protection Administration of New York City at the end of 1972, and I, began to research in areas outside of the conventional paradigm. And
I said, well, let me find some experts here. So I was introduced to a professor at Rutgers University who was a professor of experimental psychology and an expert in that area, but as well an expert in parapsychology, which is the study of non-local consciousness, including psi, telepathy, precognition, and that sort of the psychic human capacity and the scientific study of life after death. So researching that, I came across the work of an American healer and psychic named Edgar Cayce. I'm not sure whether you're familiar with that name or not.
Yes, I have heard the name, but that's about it. I can't tell you much more about him.
Yeah, well, he lived from March 18th, 1877 to January 3rd, 1945. And he is famous for going into trance and healing people at a distance. They would show him a photograph or bring him a letter, and these are thousands of cases. Right.
Yeah,
they would show him a letter or bring him a photograph of somebody at thousands of miles away or hundreds of miles away, and they would have a condition, and he would go into trance, and he would diagnose the condition and prescribe the cure, and the person was cured. So this is what we call psychic healing at a distance. So that's fine. But what I discovered is that he also did a series of what I would call remote viewings. And what he did is he remote viewed in what we can call a global coastal event at some point on the planet. Now, a global coastal event, what that means is a geological event on the planet in which all the coasts, East Coast, West Coast, North America, South America, coasts of Europe, Africa, Asia, are all affected. And what he saw were about 10 different conditions in the global coastal event that he saw. He saw, number one, destructive earthquake activity along the U.S. West Coast. Mm-hmm. Number two, the disappearance of southern portions of Carolina and Georgia. Number three, the disappearance of the greater portion of Japan under the sea. Number four, rapid earth changes in the upper portion of Europe. Number five, the emptying of the Great Lakes into the Gulf of Mexico. Number six, the rising of new lands along the east coast of the United States. Number seven, dramatic changes along the USA East Coast, including the destruction of New York City. Number eight, the upheavals of the Earth in the Arctic and the Antarctic. Number nine, volcanic eruptions in the torrid zones. And number 10, a shift in the axis of the Earth with corresponding climatic changes. And he said starting in the year 2001. Well, we're now at the year 2012. And what the Inuit said, and you can go to exopolitics.com and you'll see some videos there where you have the Inuit in our Arctic here in Canada, and they say that, in fact, the axis of the Earth is shifting. And what used to be, and they can tell it because they're out on the snow all the time, mm-hmm. and so they live very close to the land, and they say that the axis is actually shifting, but slowly.
Yes, sir.
So what happened? Sorry?
I just wanted to say I do remember a news article maybe a year ago where they had to repaint some of the airport runways. I think it was in Florida maybe, but I'm not sure where it was at this point. But do you recollect that, where the north and south had become so altered that they had to actually repaint the airline runways at I think it was a major airport in Florida or Atlanta, maybe. I'm just interjecting.
Because this is actually shifting, And
it was Tampa International. One of my people just told me, "Thank you."
Right.
That happened.
Yep. And so that's something that's actually happening that is consistent with the early remote viewing that Edgar Cayce saw. Now, so what I did in 1974, in 73 actually, 39 years ago, I wrote a book called "The Age of Cataclysm," and in that, I found that the earth sciences trends were actually, you could say that they were congruent with a global coastal event that Edgar Cayce had remote viewed, i.e., you could then conceive of how this global coastal event came out by looking at geology and seismology, and it would be consistent. And for people who want to read that book, you can go to exopolitics.com. That's www.exopolitics.com, and go to the right-hand menu and click there, and you can download a free copy of The Age of Cataclysm. Now, the last time that we checked, they were wanting something like $150 for a used copy of The Age of Cataclysm on Amazon or something. So you could.
It's more than they sold for in '74.
No, it sold for like $3.95 or something like that. What you should do is, what you can do is just go to exopolitics.com, go to the right-hand menu, and click on that link there, and we've scanned it into PDF. It'll take you right there, and you can just download it. And you can see it there. So that's what we call the catastrophic timeline. That's what Edgar Cayce remote viewed, was that catastrophic timeline.
And when did he say he was going to start? In 2001. And did it actually start right about the time that Edgar Cayce had envisioned it starting?
Well,
I mean, did you start seeing events about that?
If you go, if you go and if you go and you download the book, it'll show you, going back to 1974, how his predictions were coming true, even back then.
Okay, so they were started. Okay, and then we had that thing around Y2K where everybody expected all kinds of things to happen as well, which again, I know people still to this day, when you talk about these events and end-time events and things going on in the world today, they say, well, look at Y2K, nothing happened then, nothing's going to happen now, but I can't buy that. There's too many indicators.
Right. So we aren't talking about something that's for sure, so now... No,
I
just
can't
part one.
Just because nothing happened in... I didn't expect a lot to happen then. I mean, I bought a big water jug to store water in just in case, but I did not expect any kind of a long term, So what then if the computers had to be reset? Big deal. We could deal without them. This was 12 years ago, It wasn't
right
of a threat as what some of these things that we're seeing now, like you just mentioned, an increase in earthquakes. That alone is confirmed over and over. I got a guy here on my website, Jonathan, that reports very frequently what's going on with relation to earthquakes. And during my show, it's not uncommon for him to put on there 5.9 in such a place and 6.0 in such a place.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's common now for big earthquakes. What used to be considered huge is now kind of common, right, Alfred?
Oh, yeah, yeah. This, so that then you have to ask, well, why are we having this sudden uptick in seismicity? Now, this is where it gets very tricky. This is where it gets very tricky, because not only do we have an uptick in what I would call natural seismicity, in other words, natural earthquakes, but we have an uptick in what I would call false flag earthquakes, and these are earthquakes that are triggered by environmental warfare using HAARP and other mechanisms. And some of the HAARP earthquakes that we know of, and people can go to our website, it's called ecologynews.com. That's ecologynews.com. And we have documented the major false flag environmental warfare acts, both hurricanes, cyclones, and earthquakes that are used as modes of attack, modes of warfare. Instead of flying over a B-52 and dropping an atomic bomb on a city, you'll drop an earthquake bomb. For example, the 2010 earthquake in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, which killed 200,000 people. That's more people than were killed at Hiroshima or Nagasaki. That was a tectonic environmental warfare bomb, and that was done by HAARP.
Wow.
I'm getting a slight echo. I don't know how to cure that.
I can't hear an echo, to be honest.
Oh,
now.
okay. Well, that's fine.
You don't have my show up on another screen on your computer or anything like that.
No, I don't. I don't.
Because I know sometimes that'll do it. If I have another, up, and I'll hear a double echo. But let's hope that gets better. Or Troy, if there's anything you can do, I'll tell my producer that he's writing me something here. Maybe he's done something to fix that out. Let me see what he's saying. But, okay, he says sorry, so maybe it was something that, and he's fixed it. Are you still hearing it?
No, it's fixed.
Good.
Yeah.
Amen. Thank you, Troy.
So we've got these two kind of parallel lines, upticks going. One in what I call natural earthquakes that are upticking, and the other is the false flag earthquakes, which of course is done by the global government, the matrix, the powers that think they be, whatever name you want to use for them, that control the 17 HAARP facilities that worship God, gold, oil, and drugs. That's their version of God.
I hadn't heard that before. I've heard of when I went to Korea, they said stay away from SAM, which was sex, alcohol, and money. The money being buying things on base and selling them off base for a profit. They call that black market.
I see.
So of course sex and alcohol are pretty self-explanatory when you're in a foreign country. But that's what they told us off the plane. They said stay away from Sam. He'll get you in trouble every time. And then they explained it as sex, alcohol, and money. It's kind of cute. The Army loves girls. That's how come the show goes by RPM, Revelation Per Minute, Radio Preacher Man. It was a double acronym. Too many years working with the service, and in the Postal Service, so I couldn't help myself.
Well, then you can see this one pretty clearly. So so we have to factor that out, because they're trying to confuse people also and keep people on edge. We have Hurricane Katrina. That was an environmental warfare attack. The hurricane on Haiti, that was environmental. The cyclone on Myanmar, the earthquake in China. They love to do earthquakes right around the Olympics. The Fukushima earthquake was one, and now right around when George W. Bush came into office, FEMA announced there was going to be 3 major disasters in North America. One was a terrorist attack in New York. Of course, we had that in 9/11. Well, it wasn't a terrorist attack. It was a false flag. The second was a destructive hurricane in New Orleans. Well, it wasn't a hurricane. It was an environmental warfare attack. That was Hurricane Katrina. And they said a destructive earthquake on the West Coast. Well that's a HAARP.
Announce these things before they happen if they're not going to be the progenitor of the whole action, or the
right. That's why I call them the Federal Emergency Management Agency. In other words, they manage our emergencies. If you get my meaning, and so that means that everybody's waiting for this false flag earthquakes that's going to happen on the west coast of the U.S. And a colleague of mine, independent scientist Lorraine Murray, told me that she was traveling just outside near Green Valley, California, and was able to photograph 7 HAARP clouds in a row, and it's right before, and she photographed those. Then Barack Obama landed there at the Air Force Base right near those clouds, and then right after that they had the Green Valley earthquake, which was a HAARP earthquake. This is here in the month of October, just about a week ago. So
how big of an earthquake
that's what
was
you call
that?
It was about a 3.1.
Okay.
But that's what they call a precursor, i.e., they were practicing with those HAARP clouds, and they timed it with Obama's landing at the Air Force Base. And so that's what you call a precursor to the California earthquake. Now, when they're going to do the California earthquake, who knows? Are they going to do it before the election, after the election, sometime in 2013? Who knows? But it's there, and they've announced it. They announced 9/11. They did 9/11. They announced Katrina. They did Katrina. So they're announcing.
That's kind of an elite thing. They like to announce what they're going to do ahead of time, I've heard. I had Lindsey Williams on, and several others that have said that, and it's like, I don't know. What happened to that element of surprise? I don't know, but I guess that's not how they operate.
No, this is this is part of, it's like masonry, It's like we control every aspect of your being, and this is what we're going to do to you, but you don't know when. You follow me? So you're always on edge. That is what comes from a ruling class. These are bloodlines, and I really want to use the word in a very special sense, and I think that you'll understand this, because it's used by many people in a special sense. These are bankers and ruling monarchical bloodlines that are Satanists. They are satanic. because they worship satanic beings, and that's what keeps them in power. And that is a satanic way of going about of things, and that's what they do. Now, to return to the line of discussion about Hercolubus, we talked about Edgar Cayce. We talked about Edgar Cayce and his early premonition, or his early remote viewing of the global coastal event. Well, there's a second data point that we have, and that is the 1971 DARPA Chronovisor time travel probe of 2013. And that is when former DARPA chrononaut and whistleblower Andrew DiBisciago has now publicly announced that in 1971 he was on a one-time U.S. DARPA Chronovisor time travel probe of the year 2013, where they found the U.S. Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. under 100 feet of brackish water. They actually went to the year 2013, and they found the U.S. Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C. In the year 2013 under 100 feet of water. Now, a chronovisor is a time travel device that uses a screen or hologram to locate and display past or future events in the time-space hologram. And it was developed by two Vatican scientists, Ernetti and Gemelli, with the assistance of Enrico Fermi. And then it was given to the U.S. Department of Defense. So that after the chronovisor probe, Andy says that he was being debriefed by the lieutenant commander in the U.S. Navy intelligence, who became so nervous that he spilled his glass of water and lit up a cigarette.
Oh, yeah. So what was he nervous about, Alfred? Tell me again. What made him so nervous that he would... I mean, I guess...
because there he was in 1971, and they were telling him that in 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court building would be under 100 feet of brackish water. It would mean that all of Washington, D.C. would be under 100 feet of water.
Wow. Okay, so that would, I guess, make you a little concerned, but with it being, 42 years into the future, he personally probably stood a good chance of being on to the other side by then, eh? As far as...
Well, no,
he's still alive.
But his job was concern for the state of the nation.
Yeah.
I.e., if the United States is going to have its capital under 100 feet of water, that means that you're going to have a global coastal event.
We're going to have
to call it, at the very least,
United States Atlantis.
Yeah. It means that, right, that at the very least you probably have a tsunami, perhaps from these cliffs in Portugal and in the Azores falling off and a tsunami coming over, or you could have a Hercolubus Planet X Nemesis type event, where you have the global coastal event, which was
envisioned by the psychic Edgar Cayce. Now, what Andy Basiago says, however, is that chronovisors are not reliable because they don't identify absolute futures, and that you might go back a second time and you get a totally different future. And in fact, they had to discontinue chronovision and time travel to the past, because each time they sent children to the past, they got a different result.
Yeah.
Now, but this is the rub, is that in 1971, the defense attaché to Project Pegasus was Donald H. Rumsfeld.
And that's in what year?
1971.
Rumsfeld, and yeah. He's been around.
And exactly. And Rumsfeld was also a member of Nixon's cabinet, President Nixon's cabinet, in 1971. So that what very likely could have occurred is that the data from Project Pegasus was brought over to Nixon's cabinet, and the National Security Advisor was a fellow named Henry Alfred Kissinger.
Yeah, that boy's been around a long time too, ain't he?
Yeah. So that way, there would have been an executive decision which would have resulted in what we have now, and that is approximately 174 deep underground military bases around the world. The building of 174 deep underground military bases around the world at the cost of $2 to $3 trillion in black budget money to take care of the government. Number two, the financial and political elite. Number three, the technocracy, all the scientists, all the medical scientific personnel. Number four, the entire defense establishment, all the armed forces. Number five, the entire police force, etc.
Wow.
So now the U.S. has 174 deep underground military bases that are ready for Hercolibus that they believe is going to cause this global coastal event that they saw through their probe through Project Pegasus. Now, let's go to a third piece of data as if that weren't enough.
Yeah.
And this brings us up to a Farsight Institute report. And the Farsight Institute report is of what happened in the year 2010. And this was conducted by Dr. Courtney Brown, who put together the largest number of military-trained remote viewers in history for the year 2013. And they chose 8 targets around the world, including one of their 8 targets was the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. Remember, the 1971 DARPA chronovisor chose the Supreme Court building, which is right across the street from the U.S. Capitol. Well, this chose the U.S. Capitol. And what they found was the following. Approximately 39% of the remote viewers in the Farsight Institute study identified a catastrophic timeline in 2013 with solar flares, large meteors, tsunamis, worldwide coastal inundations, and mega catastrophe. This 2013 catastrophic event, which happens in June of 2013,
is congruent with the profile of the global coastal event, remote viewed by Edgar Cayce while in psychic trance, as reported in my 1974 book, The Age of Cataclysm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, you're mentioning 8 targets around the world.
Yeah.
So, I want to ask you real quick, if I can. If Washington, D.C. would be under 100 foot of water, that might affect all of the East Coast. I guess we could kind of assume I might better move to high ground or something.
Yeah. I mean, basically, people are recommending the following: that you're at least 1,000 meters, 1,000 to 1,500 meters above sea level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that.
If possible, 1,000 miles inland.
Wow.
And so your safe lands are basically going to be in your Rocky Mountain areas. And
that's not
what
much.
People.
That's not much of the U.S. when you think about.
Well, I mean, put it this way. No, I would say 1,500 miles in altitude and 100 miles inland.
Okay, now you said 1,500 meters above sea level.
Yeah, 1,500 meters above sea, 1,000 to 1,500 meters above sea level, and 100 miles inland.
Oh, 100 miles inland. Okay.
Yeah, 100.
I thought you said 1,000 miles inland.
No,
okay.
100.
100's more doable, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, 29% of the remote viewing reports achieved a disaster score of 0, which means they didn't see a disaster. So what Andy Bashaka said is that, look, we could have gone a second time, and we could have just, instead of seeing Washington, D.C. under 100 feet of water, we could have seen the U.S. Supreme Court listening to a case, with lawyers arguing.
Yeah.
And
so it may have been like a vision of something, and it may have had another meaning. It may have not necessarily meant that the Capitol was going to be underwater.
What it is that may have been a timeline, which is not an absolute time. It's not the timeline that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And 39% of the remote viewers saw the catastrophic timeline, but 29% of them had a zero score.
Mm-hmm.
Did not see it. So these things aren't cast in stone. So what we're saying is that, like you said, did Y2K happen, or is Y2K going to happen? Is Hercobulus coming? Is Hercobulus Planet X, Nemesis, Nibiru coming or not?
Now, why do they call it?
The answer is.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. The answer
is because those are the different names that it has, and people call it by different names.
Okay.
And so at this stage, we don't know if it's coming or not, because there's evidence for it, and then there's evidence that it might not happen. There's some evidence, for example, we had one witness from the 1980s CIA jump room program, Bernard Mendez, who came forward with his whistleblower testimony that the CIA and NASA and the NASA astronauts had discovered the existence of 153 different what we call synthetic quantum environments. These are like holographic environments that were built by a specific species of gray extraterrestrials about 400 miles out in space.
Okay.
And these are, they're like Disneylands that the Greys built out in space. And they were like psychological experiments for humanity. And so there's a possibility that what Edgar Cayce was picking up on, what the 1971 DARPA probe was picking up on, and what the remote viewers in 2010 were picking up on was a synthetic quantum environment and not a real future. This was kind of a psychological warfare game by the Greys on humanity, which actually forced the human elite it diverted them into building $3 trillion worth of deep underground military bases that are now useless. That's one possibility. On the other hand, Hercolubus, Planet X may be coming, and at the same time, if you go to exopolitics.com, you'll be able to see photographs of UFOs that are as big as a planet right around the sun. They come in through the interdimensional portal of the sun. And they're putting in gigantic rods into the sun. And what's going to happen is that if in fact Hercolubus or Planet X comes, it's the dwarf twin of the sun. The closest it will get will be about 2.85 astronomical units. That's the distance from the Earth to the sun, which is 65 million miles from the sun. So it'll be about 180 million miles, more or less. It'll be the closest that Planet X will get to the sun. The damage that it can cause then is that there's an enormous gravitation between the twin dwarf sun and our sun, which causes a lot of solar flares, and it's those solar flares which can damage the Earth. So that those giant UFOs right now, putting in those rods, what I've speculated, and I did this at a conference called UFOCon in Santa Clara a few weeks ago, that those giant UFOs are actually preparing a shielding for the Earth so that we don't get fried by those solar flares. And I showed some ancient artifacts that the Mexican government released in 2012, which show extraterrestrials in spacecraft in which the ETs are shielding the Earth from solar flares, and they're diverting the paths of comets and other celestial bodies so as not to cause damage to the Earth. So this has happened in the past.
So they're hypothesizing that there are alien grays shielding the Earth from this second sun so that it doesn't burn us all up prematurely. Okay.
Yeah, so that we would be protected. Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna have to hold that thought, Alfred, and we'll pick it up right there after the break. I'm gonna write that down.
Okay.
I'll just make a note: Grays protecting Earth, because I wanna talk about that a little more. And we'll be back, ladies and gentlemen, for the second hour of Revelation per Minute after this short break. And get yourself, Alfred, if you need something to drink or anything, then you've got 3 or 4 or 5 minutes here. All right, we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen.
And in that day they will mourn. In that day they will.
They may not be okay right now, my blessed Lord, but won't be long, ladies and gentlemen. Won't be long. We are back live and on the air with Alfred Weber here on the Radiation Per Minute broadcast. All right, Brian, say what you're saying and don't mumble, right? You're a radio preacher, man. You ain't supposed to mumble when you're on the air. Okay, you're right, folks. Anyhow, we are back with Alfred Weber, and he is the author of he's the originator of the concept of exopolitics, and he is with us tonight. And he has a new book coming out in 2013 called Dimensions. But we are actually taking a look at tonight, because of the events of the world, we're taking a look at some of these things that are going on with Planet X, Nibiru, the twin sun, Comet Elenon, whatever you want to call this event, folks. But some people have seen this twin sun, and they are pictures on the internet. And a friend of mine who was one of my early guests on the show, Daniel from Holy and Pure, he actually showed some video of like this sun where it was like the 45 degrees from the other sun, which Alfred has talked about tonight. So with that said, that's just to fill anybody in who's coming in for the second hour. We've talked about a lot more than that. You can catch it on the archives if you missed the first hour. But we want to get on back into what we were talking about. We were talking about alien grays, the potential that they might be protecting our atmosphere with reflective shields, I guess, Alfred, to say anything better, which I have my theory on alien grays. Anywho,
well, we don't know that. In fact, the intelligence behind these very, very large spacecraft, some of them are as large as planets that are now big, photographed around the sun, and there's increasing traffic of spacecraft around the sun. In fact, just yesterday, SOHO, the NASA's telescope around the sun, blocked out photographing the sun, and there was a lot of speculation that they probably blocked it out either because Hercules, Planet X Nibiru was visible, or because there were just too many large spacecraft there, and they didn't want people to be publishing that. But these large spacecraft seem to be carrying out operations on the sun. One recently put in these large rods into the sun. So
how can they withstand the heat of the sun at that close proximity, Alfred?
Well, you see, this is the great paradox, because our conventional 3D science is at a certain level, and we know from the physicist Nassim Haramein that, in fact, for our solar system, the sun is a singularity. It's an interdimensional portal into our solar system, and we have photographs of these large craft coming into the solar system through the sun. We have photographs of triangular-shaped portals and rectangular portals in the sun. These are actually interdimensional doorways where the craft come through the sun. Now, that's what is occurring. And,
wow.
And, yeah.
Well, that sounds like it's going to be hotter than you know where coming through that portal.
Yeah.
If it's coming through the sun, maybe you would have to be like used to high temperatures, maybe even a demonic being or something not quite human, to be able to sustain that kind of...
you know, perhaps the physics, you know, for example, our black hole at the oops, oh boy, our black hole at the center of our galaxy is the interdimensional portal to our galaxy, and that is the way that advanced extraterrestrial civilizations get into and out of our galaxy, is through the black hole. Now, the conventional wisdom is that a black hole is so dense that nothing escapes it, and it consumes everything that goes into it. And so it's paradoxical that it is an interdimensional portal. In the same way, the conventional wisdom is that the sun is this nuclear furnace, and at the same time, it's an interdimensional portal. We know, and so how that paradox is resolved, I can't tell you on this and that. Space and out of the are not those temperatures.
Wow.
In the same way that the spacecraft entering our galaxy through the black hole are not subject to the extreme gravitational pressures of the black hole. And perhaps that's a dimensional issue, that you just go up to another frequency outside of the third dimension of time-space, and that's how you get through these portals. I cannot provide an explanation on this program for that.
Okay. Well, then I guess we'll have to go on and just discuss other things, such as a couple things. A question: when your dogs bark, somebody asked what kind of dogs they were, and I told them I'd ask you.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, that's Seven. Seven is our little papillon. A papillon is a small dog, and they're called papillon, which means butterfly in French, because if you look at its ears look like a butterfly, and Seven is our executive assistant. So whenever anybody comes to the front door, Seven is sure to go and greet them, and that's what happened then. He went to the front door to greet whoever was coming in.
I see. Okay, well, that's what dogs do. You're absolutely right, Alfred. Yeah. But that's why we have them too, is to alert us when we have guests and that type of thing. So it's good to have a little dog sometimes around. Now, the other question was proposed with the underground bunkers, if you will, or actually, I think it's quite extensive what they've done underground from some of the things I've seen and heard about. But what makes these elite think that they're going to be able to survive under there? I mean, with the earthquakes and everything that's going on and the temperatures rising, won't the core of the earth get hotter, and won't the core of the earth risk breaking up and swallowing them up? Amen. Those are all key questions, and from what we know, the extent of the underground bases and underground cities is extraordinary. For example, we have reports that these all have what they call maglev trains, magnetic levitation trains that go multiple thousands of miles an hour. You've got very advanced technologies
that are not in the civilian economy on the surface that are being used in the underground economy. And we have reports that there is an underground maglev train that goes all the way from the tip of North America to the tip of South America. So you're going, and these go several thousand miles per hour, and there are underground cities, and there's 194 of them. So there is a huge complex for the military, industrial, finance, permanent war economy complex that has used trillions of dollars in the black budget to build underground. This is partially why the United States has suffered so much, to where its infrastructure is falling apart, to where its roads are falling apart, to where its economy is falling apart, to where its bridges, to where its education system has been sucked dry, is because all of the monies that should have been plowed back into infrastructure on the surface, in fact, have been robbed and put into infrastructure for the underground bases after they got the intelligence through Project Pegasus in 1971 that there was going to be a global coastal event, plausibly through Hercolibus, Planet X, Nemesis, or Nibiru.
And did they not think that it could be that infamous return of Jesus Christ that was prophesied in the Bible? Did they think in the back of their minds that maybe if they're not serving him, they're going to need a place of protection to try to hide? Have you seen anything in your studies where they were maybe thinking about that?
Yeah. You see, that's actually a very profound question, because from advise the controllers of this planet, or currently that control the political and financial systems of this planet, are a series of financial and monarchical bloodline families in the Merovingian bloodlines and in certain Jewish bloodlines, and they are satanic. They are satanic Jewish. Not all Judaism is satanic. I want to say that these are specific satanic.
It's more like the Zionist Jews, or there's another word I'm thinking of.
These are
Ashkenazi or something like that.
Yeah, these are satanic Zionist Jews who use blood sacrifice, and these are satanic monarchs who use blood sacrifice.
I've heard tell about
that's how they stay in power. And so what it is that they've taken the planet hostage, and they're holding the planet hostage against the universe government, which is, if you go back exopolitically, and this is where exopolitics and spirituality are consistent, because there was a rebellion in this sector of the galaxy against the government, what you could call the government of Source, or the government of Christ, or the government of God, and that has come down to, on this planet, the situation where these satanic Zionist families represent the satanic stronghold on this planet. And that's why, for example, Jesus Christ, incarnated on this planet 2,000 years ago, was as part of the liberation of this planet. this is that is part of a process which is occurring now. So you're right. Now, this is a point where religion, spirituality, and science are starting to converge, and exopolitics is that social science which begins to explain a lot of these things.
Yes, I heard this the other day. That is a quote. I read it in, it said, if you believe something about religion that believes science is not relevant, is not wise, something to that effect. If your religion doesn't, because science, everything typically from the Bible can be explained scientifically. The things that have happened, yes, they happened. Yes, they were prophesied in the Bible. I don't doubt the Bible for one moment, but the things that have happened can be explained scientifically, and I think the things that are going to happen in the future will also have things leading up to their cause and effect situation there, such as you're talking about underground bunkers and things where people are going to be hiding thinking they're going to be safe, quote unquote. But now there's scripture in the Bible that says in the end times that the persecution, that things will be so bad that these men will be crying out for the rocks to fall on them. And I would hypothesize that if they're in those underground bunkers, they're going to be like, just let them fall in on us because we can't take no more of this. Because the pressure from the Antichrist is going to be so great, Alfred, the persecution, if you will, on all of mankind and the judgment of God that will be being poured out in the last half of the tribulation will just be more than man can take. And there's scriptures, Alfred, that even say that a man will want to die and won't be able to die, and that's in the same vicinity as this rock's falling. And I don't have my Bible right here with me. It's over there somewhere, but I just didn't bring it over here when I came to the... It's in Revelation.
Now, there is some thought to take the concept of the tribulation. There is some thought that if in fact there is a Hercolubus Planet X flyby, and if in fact there would not be the intervention of the extraterrestrials to shield the Earth, that there would be a tremendous tribulation because of the fire and because of the toxic red substances coming from this brown dwarf star and the poisoning of the water, i.e., everything that has been stated in the Bible in some sections,
wormwood, it talks about
prior flybys.
It talks about something landing in the water and poisoning the water, wormwood it's called, which I would hypothesize is probably a rogue planet or an asteroid or something to that effect.
Yeah. You see, there's a whole science now, or a whole school of thought, that tracks Planet X, Hercolubus Nemesis, by decoding biblical prophecy.
Right.
And it decodes certain passages, like the Wormwood passage, saying that has to do with Planet X. There's also alternative passages where they said, no, Wormwood really meant Chernobyl and Fukushima. But you know how biblical prophecy is. In other words, many people have different interpretations. But now, there, in those people who study Planet X from a Bible prophecy point of view, they study it. They use things like the Wormwood passage to show that Wormwood passage is talking about Planet X. There's also a thing called the Colburn Bible, which you may have heard of.
I have heard of that. With Marshall Masters.
What the Colburn Bible? What the Colburn Bible is that they say there was a parallel Bible to the Old Testament made by the Egyptians, and they made that Bible right after one of the most destructive passages of Planet X, and that Bible survived up until somewhere in 1500s or so. In England, there was a copy, and then one of the English kings sent to destroy it.
Okay.
But they were able to protect parts of it, and parts of it remained. And that they have some remaining parts of it, which are parallel to parts of the Old Testament, which talk about the old passages, the old flybys of Planet X. So that if you want to study Planet X or Hercolubus, not from the scientific point of view, but from the biblical point of view and the prophecy point of view, you can study it from that point of view too. And the wormwood passage is what is sort of your starting point.
Yes. It's interesting that and one of my folks are like, yeah, let's trust the Egyptians. Yeah, the Egyptians, boy, they've been a mess, really, ever since the Exodus, where the Jews were freed from their 400 years of slavery. I don't think Egypt's ever fully recovered from that incident, and I don't know that they will. I think that they're still kind of got a serious grudge against God, probably because of that event, wouldn't you say? Because they just were so devastated.
Yeah. You know, from an exopolitics point of view, some of the research shows that the predecessors to the pharaohs were the Anunnaki ETs, who had what we call cone heads. And that is that they have these conical skulls. They have these elongated
seen
skulls.
that.
Yeah,
and
that is why the pharaohs and even Queen Nefertiti wore this conical headdress.
Yeah, I also saw the movie Coneheads too. That was funny. With Dan Aykroyd. Yeah, that was.
Oh yeah, sure. And and you know, so they were using humor to make a basic point there, but that the Anunnaki ETs who landed in Adam's calendar, South Africa, about 280,000 years ago, and first began to export the gold from our planet, and actually devolved our DNA down from a 12-strand DNA to a 2-strand DNA. The Egyptian pharaohs were kind of the genetic lineage down to them, and that they were coneheads, and so that when we had the solar system catastrophe of 9500 BC, which is when a fragment of the Vela supernova came into the solar system and destroyed the surface ecology of Mars, and also destroyed the ancient maritime civilization of Earth that Plato called Atlantis. That's when the sort of the old Egypt, the old interplanetary society. See, prior to that solar system catastrophe, Earth and Mars were a single interplanetary society under the Egyptian pharaohs, and so they suffered a major blow there, and then you know, and so, you know, and that was in about prior to 9500 BC.
And this Colburn Bible, is that where you're getting some of this information about these cone heads and such, or is that coming from?
No. That's a different line of research. That is the exopolitics research that we do. You can go to exopolitics.com, or people can go to our Project Mars. It's www.projectmars.net. We have it's a Washington State nonprofit called the Mars Anomaly Research Society, and I'm the chairman of the Mars Anomaly Research Society. Andrew DiBasciago is the president. And as a matter of fact, on Wednesday, we're having the first organizing conference meeting. We're going to have the first annual Mars Expo. It'll be in Las Vegas, Nevada, in October of 2013. So, you know, people put that down in your calendars. We'll have Mars experiencers there, and people who've actually been to Mars. We'll have a number of people who've been to Mars there. We'll have.
You talking astronauts or astroprojectionauts? Which one are you? I mean, that's a little play. I love to play with the words.
No. These are called chrononauts. These are people who have teleported to Mars and back.
So my joke was actually applicable when I said astronauts or astroprojectonauts. How do you like that word?
Yeah. Right. They have actually teleported to and back from Mars, and this will be in Las Vegas in October of 2013. This will be an annual event. We're having the first Mars Expo in Las Vegas in October of 2013, and you can go to our website, projectmars.net or exopolitics.com, and there are over 150 papers there with text and photographs. You can see photographs of Egyptian artifacts on the surface of Mars, things like the sarcophagus of an Egyptian king on the surface of Mars. And you go, oh my God, how did the sarcophagus of an Egyptian king get onto the surface of Mars? Well, prior to 9500 BC, Mars and Earth were an interplanetary society that was ruled over by the Egyptian pharaohs.
Wow.
And that's why you have a planetary culture on Earth and a planetary culture on Mars. If you look at Earth, it's a big planetary culture. You've got it's a big pyramid culture. You have pyramids in Egypt, pyramids in Mexico, South America, pyramids in China, pyramids in Eastern Europe. It's a whole worldwide pyramidal culture, and those pyramids date back to the time of the interplanetary pyramidal culture of Earth and Mars prior to the 9500 BC planetary catastrophe.
So this planetary catastrophe in 9500 BC, what did that consist of exactly then in your hypothesis?
That is what you find in the Bible as the Great Flood with Noah. And that happened when a fragment of the Vela supernova came into the solar system, and it destroyed, or greatly damaged the Martian surface ecology. Mars used to be a verdant planet like ours. It was like ours, a green planet, and now it's slightly oblong. It's a bit like a football. And it's a very rough terrain. It's all desert, and and also our planet was damaged because a thriving, advanced world maritime civilization called Atlantis, and that was destroyed too. And we're just coming, out of the post-cataclysm now.
Yeah, and to give you another laugh, weren't they making supernovas still about the time you wrote your book in 1974? That was a car back then, wasn't it, bro?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, the supernova. Exactly. I had to go there. And a little trivia on that, by the way.
Oh, yeah, but that's a very good point.
They named the car probably after that event that you're referencing, but also, they use a lot of these names of cars. They have a lot of meanings, from an elitist.
They have Gemini. They love astrological signs.
Yeah, and they like, as you said, to tell us ahead of time what's going to go on down the future. So there's a lot of this kind of stuff in movies, commercials.
Now, also, I've noticed that lately the automobiles have gotten into spiritual materialism, because I saw a car that was called, I believe it was called a Soul. And I said, holy baloney.
Yeah, that's a little Soul. Yeah.
I mean, that is spiritual materialism to the nth degree. I've got my little, I forget which automobile manufacturer was doing it, but it was like, the Soul.
It was Kia.
I've got my little Soul here.
Kia Soul, and that's a Korean car.
Yeah, the Kia Soul.
Made near
Soul. Yeah, but I mean, that is the ultimate in spiritual materialism.
See, what they should have done is they should have spelled it Seoul, like the city that's in Korea, since it's a Korean car.
Oh, right.
Could have called it the Korean Soul and gave it that fancy spelling, and it probably would have sold even better. Those people would have been like, oh, I like that, how they spell Seoul. Most people wouldn't realize that's a city in Korea. And they'd be like thinking they're just weird to be weird. And they would think it was cool.
That's right. Right.
Probably would have sold even more with the fancy spelling.
Exactly.
Just a hypothesis on my part. I guess we can...
No. Well, you can see, Brian, we've covered a lot of territory today, but... It is a territory, I think, that has a bit of meaning to it, because we have shown some real possibilities here. That is, we don't know whether or not we're going to have this celestial body, this twin dwarf star, coming in. I mean, there's positive, there's evidence for it.
That could actually be wormwood. It could actually be the wormwood of in the Bible that we're beginning to see coming into our atmosphere. And also, you mentioned way early in the first hour about something that's pushing these planets, if you will, comets into the atmosphere. Yeah. And my thought on that, Alfred, was, how most planets have a ring of little comets and planets around them, right? So my hypothesis was, if a large planet is entering our atmosphere and these things are starting, could these be like part of that ring that's around the big planet that's maybe coming into the atmosphere? I mean, that's what came to my mind when you said it's as if something is pushed in. That would only make sense. And while I got you on the line, somebody said something, or I read something recently about Venus used to have, I think, a bunch of, like a ring around it or something, and now it doesn't have as much of a ring around it anymore. Have you heard anything about that? That those planets
right.
This be some of
that could be,
Could these planets?
No, I mean there are there are a lot of changes to the
atmosphere,
celestial bodies in the solar system. I mean, there's a whole school of thought that says that our moon is actually an artificial satellite that is there in order to exert mind control on us. So,
Wow, that's out there a little bit, but I know one day.
No, really, there's a school of thought that states that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I don't doubt that there is that school of thought. I'm just saying, for me, that's the Bible talks about the moon, so we know there's been a moon for at least 1,000.
But there are in fact pre-lunar cultures. There are records of human cultures that antedate the moon, apparently.
Okay, and that's a stretch for me there. That would take a lot of research.
I know. So
mind bug.
What I've discovered is that exopolitics research in astronomical areas like Planet X is wild and woolly. And
good.
And and I've been on the tail of Planet X for 39 years now, and I still can't tell you to a certitude, yes or no, whether it's coming. So, in fact, you can go to my desktop, to my computer desktop, and the major file that I have for Planet X is for and against Planet X. It's not like Planet X. It's for and against Planet X, because I don't know what's going to happen. And the space that I'm holding is that if it's going to happen, then what I'm looking at is the activity of all these planet-sized UFO spacecraft that are putting rods into the sun and conducting operations around the sun, which looks like they're preparing to shield us against it, because they are concerned with they're concerned about our civilizations. They have a protective relationship with us. They're kind of our elder brothers or our progenitors. And so I'm not going to, be here and start panicking and that's what I meant by the positive timeline. i.e., you can have the catastrophic timeline, which says, Wormwood is coming, Planet X is coming. It's called Planet X, it's called Wormwood, it's called Nemesis, it's called the Destroyer, it's called all these names. But at the same time, through exopolitics, we know that we have these other forces that look like they're trying to help us. So I'm trying to show the evidence for the positive. Now, we know that the bloodline bankers and the monarchs have built 194 deep underground bases where the financial and political elites are going to go underground, where the entire armed forces are going to go underground, all the bankers, all the police forces, all the medical personnel are going to be underground. We aren't going to have doctors. We aren't going to have hospitals. All those personnel are going to be underground. So they'll
just blame it on Obamacare and say they all retired, but they're really underground.
Yeah,
the doctors, they can't afford to practice up here anymore.
So this is way beyond, the 2012 election and Obama, Romney, and beyond any particular country. This is like planetary, and this is in the realm of God. This is in the realm of Source, and so
we like to include him here at the Cuban Network. We sure don't want to exclude God from our topics.
Yeah.
Amen. And I appreciate you giving him that out and giving him that place, in exopolitics where you try to tie it together rather than excluding God and only running with the alien agenda because, I think he plays a big part in what we're seeing happening. It's tends to be prophesied in the Bible, and I believe that these men having their underground bunker hideout cities, if you will, and I've heard they're quite extensive, is for a reason. Because I'm telling you, the elite knows, man. They've been worshiping Lucifer, as you mentioned, and they kind of have a clue as to where we're at in time. I think the devil has been around a long time, Alfred, and so he knows the timeline, right? And if the Bible's going down like it says it's going to come down, then the devil's doing everything he can to snooker and swindle these elite into thinking that he's going to be their saving grace. And these tunnels underground and cities underground is probably his little carrot he's dangling in front of him, like, this is your saving grace, folks. Kind of like we believe as Christians, we believe at the Christians United Broadcasting Network that the Lord is our refuge. He's going to take us up out of here, which is a whole nother thing. Because I think we might have mentioned that last time you were on about aliens being blamed for the rapture of the Christians, and how that everyone believes in aliens, and they could easily say, yeah, aliens took these people and took these dead people out of the ground. You've probably studied that somewhat, over the last 39 years. Have you, I'm sure, made a connection?
Well, there's a whole, put it this way, the Earth has been the subject of a number of predatory races. For example, the Draco reptilians and the Orion Greys. And we have the 2002 Roper poll in which 2% of American adults have stated that they feel that they've been abducted by extraterrestrials, namely Greys. And if you take 300 million, 2% of that is 6 million people. So that's a sizable number.
That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Who believe they've been... Wow. And that was done in too. Now, have you seen an increase in the amount of people claiming that they feel like they've been abducted by aliens? Because I think that's on the rise now, isn't it?
No, actually, the abduction phenomenon is something more of the 20th century, something more of the post-war era, and the 80s and 90s, and then it's more on the decline now because what has happened, see, the Draco reptilians and the Orion Greys, you could say that they're more the, quote, demonic races, and what has happened is that the upper dimensional ethical human races like the Pleiadians, the Alpha Centaurians, and those who are in the Galactic Federation forces have gotten together, and they're beginning to clear a lot of the planet out. This is the positive timeline side, and that is that this planet was actually timelined for takeover by the Draco reptilians and the Orion Greys sometime between the year 2000 and 2050. And this was in a 1964 U.S. intelligence report, allegedly. Now, that is not the case, because they have been beaten back, and people can go to exopolitics.com and go to the right-hand menu, and you'll see a menu item called Galactic Governance, and you can read the articles there that'll give you some of that background. And so we are under a lot of protection by the upper dimensional ethical extraterrestrials. And that's what gives me a lot of faith that we're on a positive timeline, even with Wormwood even if Wormwood is coming up, because we have the evidence of these large-scale UFOs that are putting these rods into the sun and taking other measures that would protect us against the large-scale solar flares.
Now, I haven't seen, and I don't study as extensively as you've been doing, but I haven't seen anything else or heard anything else about these aliens putting rods into the sun. I may have heard a smidgen about it somewhere.
Yeah.
Somehow, not real.
Well, you see, what I've done is just to make it easy. Is that Ryan? Is that we've started various Facebook groups, and so we have a Facebook group called 2013 Dual Sun Mystery. And people are welcome to join it. And you can go into that group right now. Just go to Facebook, and you'll see the video of the UFOs putting those rods into the sun last week.
Okay, tell us that website again, Alfred.
Yeah, just go to Facebook, and then go to the search function in Facebook and look up a group called 2013 Dual, D-U-A-L, Sun Mystery, 2013 Dual Sun Mystery. Ask to join that group. I'm the administrator of the group. I'll let you right in. And that group is dedicated toward the study of Wormwood, or the study of, Planet X. It's got 100 names. And that's why we call it Dual Sun Mystery, because it's a big mystery. It's one of God's mysteries.
Yes, I think there's some weird things going on, but the Bible does talk about, things happening in the end times, such as the grass being burned up throughout the world, and the fish in the sea dying. We're already seeing, we've seen that in the last year or so, where mass amounts of fish pulling up on the shores dead because, and they're saying on the news or whatever, I've seen it said that it's because the water temperature is getting too hot for the fish. And they're actually just dying, cooking or whatever. I don't know if they're cooking or stroking out or having a heart attack or what fish do when they get too hot. But I've seen it. It was even here in Florida, down around, I think, Fort Lauderdale, and there was like thousands of them pulled up in the docks where the boats are supposed to be, and just
you see that could be Wormwood.
Well, Yes, I think what we're seeing is the heating of the water. They've actually said, and also I think we're going to see. Someone told me a couple of weeks ago that next year is going to be even hotter. One of my guests said next year is going to be even hotter. So what we're seeing is the grass and the trees and everything. If they keep getting hotter and hotter, they're going to be more and more flammable, which means lightning. And
then from that point of view, that means that Hercolobus, Planet X, Wormwood, Nemesis, the destroyer is approaching. That's why the Earth is getting hotter.
I see all these things coming together. Also, the lightning storms are greater and more severe and more common than they've ever been. And when you start drying out the grass, from the heat and from the sun and the second sun, if you will, the baby sun, the mini-me sun. Hey, we're all into the movies tonight. But you got the sun and you got mini-me sun, I guess. But these things are corresponding to heat up the earth and to dry out the surfaces of the earth. land is drier than it's ever been. A lot of our land is under drought conditions where it's just cracking up from the dryness. So,
right.
I think that I can appreciate your studies for the last 39 years, Alfred, because they're absolutely backing up what we believe our Bible, our Judeo-Christian Bible, has taught us, that these things are going to come to pass. And when you think about Fukushima and the oil spill from the Gulf spill and these kind of things, that was my hypothesis after the oil spill, even before Fukushima, was that oil and those aspersions that they're putting in the oil to clean it up are going to evaporate into the atmosphere. And now I could hypothesize that maybe some of the radiation from Fukushima even, these things are evaporating when the water evaporates and getting up into clouds and being moved here and there. And then when it rains, wouldn't you think that trees covered in oily substance from rain that was transported from, say, the Gulf of Mexico, you see my theory here, that as it rains, substance is going to dry on those leaves, and especially if you've got rising temperatures, and then you got lightning striking. I can tell you a week and a half ago, I saw lightning that absolutely made my jaw drop. It was so severe and looked like it went from heaven to earth. I mean, it was looking like touchdown, baby. I mean, I was driving my car in this storm, and I was like, a couple of times, literally, I could not help it. I guess my mouth just dropped open in awe of that lightning. It was that magnificent. So these things are going to spark wildfires more and more, and we are so almost out of time, Alfred. But I'm just saying, that was my hypothesis, and I think it bears some chance of being true, that the trees and the ground is going to be saturated with unclean rain, if you will, based on some of the disasters that we've seen. And it's just going to be I'm afraid the earth is going to burn one day if we ain't careful. Just a thought to leave you with. But tell us again, I want you to announce your websites and such again, where people...
Well, we're at exopolitics.com, and I'd just like to say that we're promoting the positive timeline, and that's based on exopolitics, which is source-oriented, and which includes the entire multiverse, which is cooperating, we believe, and we believe we can show this through science, to open up a positive pathway for humanity in the future.
Yes. Whew. Well, I think we're about out of time, Alfred, and I want to thank you for coming up on here and sharing a bit about this.
Thank you very much.
And I like the idea that, you're tying in science and Bible prophecy. I think that I would encourage you to continue your work, and I wouldn't put I'm not putting too much hope in the gray guys protecting us so much.
Oh, yeah. No.
I'm afraid they could turn on us.
90 seconds.
No. It's not the grays that are doing it. I'm talking about the large-scale UFOs that are around the sun.
We're not sure if they're man-made or from another atmosphere.
They are probably human extraterrestrials.
Okay, then that makes more sense. They are something that our government is secretly, or some government is secretly made in order to do this. Well, maybe we need to pray for our leaders, then, that they would have a heart.
No, they are advanced humans from the Pleiades, from Alpha Centauri, from Andromeda. See, our entire galaxy is predominantly a human galaxy. The human form is general throughout our galaxy.
Okay. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to have to leave it with that on account of it is about 8. But Wow, I don't put much faith in any human that didn't come from Earth then, let me say that, because they could turn on us.
Well, that's okay.
And they could let the sun come on in. Amen. They'd be like...
10 seconds.
Them people need some sun.
Okay.
But...
well, thank you very much, Brian.
Yes, sir. Have a great night then, and we'll see you soon, Alfred.
Good.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Good night. And ladies and gentlemen, God bless you all, and thank you for coming into the Revelation Per Minute chat room and the archives and to all of this here. Amen. We've